from Africa indeed, but we've got one or two other competitors who might do some damage in this race. It's good to see Paul Evans here, twice Olympic 10,000 metre finalist, won the Chicago Marathon this year, very much in form. Here's the man who fears the Africans, but not this year as he did last year. European cross-country champion John Brown made the Olympic 10,000 metre final. He was 10th in that.
He also has the world record for 3,000 metres. He's 20 years old, he's from Kenya, he's Daniel Coleman.
Well, Daniel Coleman, you probably heard that introduction in the background. The world record holder at 3,000 metres, just missed the world record at 5,000 metres by 1 second. Won the overall Grand Prix. So the men's race over 9.3 kilometres underway. It's one short lap, 6 big laps plus the finish. And Coleman has stormed away at the front, hoping to make an early impression. But he is a very fine, uninhibited runner. He didn't make the Kenyan Olympic team for Atlanta, but since the Olympics, really, some of the racing has taken the world by storm. To take the 3,000 metre world record by such a big margin, and then to come so close to Gabriel Selassie's 5,000 metre record. He's so uninhibited, and one of the brilliant young runners. There's an 18-year-old Ethiopian who won the race last year in this lineup too, Mezagebu, and the world junior champion at 5,000 and 10,000 metres. There's such talent. Mezagebu wearing number 13, there he is in the black top and the white shorts, just behind with 18, number 18 there was Christopher Kalong, another 20-year-old Kenyan. Well, Brendan, this young fella took the world by storm at the end of last season, took $250,000 away after the Grand Prix final, but it was the memories on the track that the rest of us took away.
Well, certainly that 3,000 metres when he ran 7 minutes 20 seconds, beating the record by 5 seconds, was a staggering performance. But whether he's as good on the country, well, we're not absolutely convinced of that. And John Brown, number 2, the now European cross-country champion, let Daniel Coleman do the early running there, and now has taken his time and joined him alongside. John Brown there, number 2, the Sheffield athlete. Went off to Iowa State University in America, where he learned a lot about running, but stayed in touch all the time with his coach George Gandy, who's done over the years has been a great servant of British distance running down at Loughborough University, where they've got a tremendous squad of young athletes there now. In second place, Millen of France, then Daniel Coleman, then Paul Taylor, the Cumbrian, and moving through quickly with the long black hair is Keith Cullen of Chelmsford Athletic Club, then Andrew Pearson. And the British athletes actually are certainly attacking these Africans. Before the race, John Brown told us that the challenge was going to come from Africa. Well, he may have said that with tongue-in-cheek, but he set off today as he finished in the European Cross-Country Championship. He led all the way that day, and here is a tactic we got used to a few weeks ago. He was the first British athlete for over 20 years to win a major international cross-country title, and has that given him some unusual confidence. John Brown here now attacking the downhills as much as he's attacking the uphills. Milon of France in second place, then Keith Cullen, then Andrew Pearson, then Paul Taylor.
Interesting in that shot, Steve Tunstall wearing 53 in the all blue. Remember him, the Legionnaire that ran for France at the World Cross Country Championships back in 1988. But number 17, Keith Cullen, what an impressive run he had last week in Belgium, in Brussels, in the first of the international cross-country races, the series of races. He stayed right there until the final stage. He was only beaten on the printing. But Brendan, the way in which Coleman is running this race is quite astounding. He's just popped up from about 8th place all of a sudden.
Well, I think Daniel Coleman decided he'd have the British athletes a little bit of a time in the sun. And there he came from about 30 yards behind, and now suddenly went darting through the field and straight into the lead, ahead of John Brown, Keith Cullen, Andrew Pearson, Paul Taylor, Milon of France, and then Mezagebu, the other African. But if you look at Coleman, he doesn't look as fluid on those uphills as he does on the flat. He seems to be labouring up the hills. He's obviously running in bursts, and that's the way the Africans run, and that's what makes them so difficult to run against. They run in varying paces, whereas European distance runners who train at even pace prefer to race at even pace, but don't like the stop-start approach that these Africans have. But Daniel Coleman, one of the very best we've ever seen from Africa. There's Paul Evans, the marathon runner, down the field. David Miles, Gated Harriers, and the field is quite concertina there. Number 31, but at the back of the field, Matthew Vaux-Harvey of Stourport Athletic Club. But there, John Brown now back in the lead, and Daniel Coleman slipping on that uphill part of the course, and now he's about 30 metres behind John Brown, who's obviously maintained his pace on an even keel. And Coleman has come and gone. He led at the beginning, faded away, came again, and I wonder if he's going to do it again when they come onto the top field. But John Brown, well, this is the first time I can honestly say that I've approached a cross-country race for a fair few number of years when a British athlete has had a real outstanding chance of beating some of the best in the world, including the top Africans, the outstanding Africans that we've seen. Mezigabu, the World Junior Cross Country Championship, who won this race last year. He's at the back of that group, moving through just gradually and consistently. And now on the level part of the field, Daniel Coleman at the back of that large group, not too happy on the slippy parts of the course, not too happy on the inclines, but very, very happy on the flat. And they're in about 5th place now. On the outside, Daniel Coleman looks for a bit of easier ground and starts making a move again.
And Mike Brown, where you're on the course, well done. And we're glad
coming up towards the end of the first of 6 large laps, about 1,400 metres. Look at Coleman, he just pops through on the inside of Jan Millen, the Frenchman. And well, we say about uninhibited running, well, you can't get more uninhibited than that. He's enjoying himself out there. When you have the ability to run as fast as he had on the track, as Brendan was saying earlier, that we don't know how that translates to the country. And I have to say that Coleman, who started running when he was, 8 years old. He's a man who had never heard of Roger Bannister, and yet he's at the stage of running 2 sub-4-minute miles back-to-back. He's one of the real talents of world middle and long distance running now.
Well, he was outstanding on the track last season. That 7:20, 3,000 metres was a phenomenal performance. And his big target for this year, Daniel Coleman, is to run a race that I'm quite excited about seeing. He wants to be the first man to run under 8 minutes for 2 miles. That's to run 2 4-minute miles back to back. And nobody can argue that he's got the capability. But there he goes again. This is now Daniel Coleman stretching out, running like he runs on the track with complete fluidity. But I don't think he's as happy on the country as he is on the track. Saying that, he's now about 20 metres ahead of the European champion John Brown. But John's not being overawed by this. John's tackling him gradually. He's not going to be drawn into the tactics of fast and slow running that this man in particular likes to do. And now joining that leading group, apart from John Brown, Keith Cullen, Millen of France, number 9 is Shadrach Hoff of South Africa, and his teammate Ramala of South Africa. They are 2 good African athletes, and the South African athletes are beginning to attack the Kenyans. They're beginning to become more confident. And also in 4th place, Mezigabu, last year's winner. Now Daniel Coleman. The gap has shortened.
Well, he says he'll run 6 races this winter on the country, but he will not run the World Cross Country Championship, Coleman. He doesn't want to do that. This, he considers, a means to an end. It's part of his build-up for the World Championships in Athens next season. As I said earlier, he failed to make the Olympic team for Kenya for Atlanta, and that hurt him. He then went out and broke the world records, came close to the world record over 5,000 metres. When he's in Britain, he's based in Teddington. He's helping to support his family now. They've bought a farm and they all make their living by working on the farm. With that $250,000 from the Grand Prix win last year, that set the family up, and they're enjoying life.
Well, he's from a family of 13 children, and one of the things he said when he came back from the very successful summer he had, where he won about $500,000, he said to his mother that he didn't want her or any of the family to earn their living selling potatoes at the roadside. He wanted them to work on the farm themselves. And I think, when you think about it, the great boxers from America came from the deprived cities. The Kenyans are now doing that, and exactly the same. When they come to Europe, they're taking their money back and they're investing it wisely. Very intelligent young man, Daniel Coleman. Very, very good athlete. But will he last the distance? And will he last the distance running this uneven pace? Because behind him, apart from John Brown, there's Meza Gebu, the world junior champion at 5 and 10,000 meters. There's Ramala, the South African. There's also Shadrach Hoff. And there are some of the British athletes now trailing a long way behind Daniel Coleman. But John Brown has been consistent at his pace, consistent in his position. And Keith Cullen, just behind John Brown, is running a very good race too.
Well, remember Brown beat Turgat earlier on this season. And Turgat won the Brussels race last week. He beat Guerra. And Guerra was close to Turgat last week. So Cullen very much in form. Remember, he had to drop out early in the European cross-country championship. He'd had flu the previous week. We were talking to his mother outside the box, and she said, is he going to run? Because she was very concerned. But there's Pearson, Brendan, number 6. He's had a good few races on the country too.
Well, this is good to see. 3 Britons in the first 4. Just short of the halfway stage of this race now, but not surprisingly, Daniel Coleman, the Kenyan, leading. John Brown, who's tracked him all the way. Then Andrew Pearson in 3rd place. And then Keith Cullen. I'm sure they've had a boost in their confidence by the performance of John Brown becoming European champion. And it's good to see the 3 British athletes. Millen of France next, then Meza Gebu, and then Ramala of South Africa behind him, and then Shadrach Hoff. So 3 Britons in the first 4 here, but behind the world record holder for 3,000 meters, the outstanding talent of the leading athlete in the Grand Prix series this year, Daniel Coleman, but only a few yards ahead. And John Brown is running a good solid race as they approach the 4th lap of this race.
Well, we've got 4 of these large circuits to go, plus the finish. And Brown tucked in very sensibly, using Coleman, running a regular pace, just accelerating up the hill as Coleman does. Cullen is there, so is Milan, the Frenchman, as we've said. And Meza Gebu, he's only 18 according to the official records. He won here last year, as we said, World Junior Champion. Had a little look at his watch there.
Well, I'm sure he wasn't just looking to see what time of day it was. I'm sure he was looking to see how long he'd been running. And if he looked closely, he'd find out he's been running about 12 minutes. So he's not even halfway yet. I wonder whether that meant he was a bit tired. Probably not. But those 2 now pulling away from the chasing group. And John Brown now. He's let Coleman do a bit of the running. And is Coleman vulnerable in the later stages of this race? But that's a very positive move by John Brown. But this man Coleman can close gaps like nobody else we've ever seen on the track. John Brown running well up the hills. Not at all a problem with the conditions for John Brown here. Now, John Brown, the European cross-country champion, finds himself about 15 meters ahead of Daniel Coleman. Well, he's quickly reversed that thing, and when we saw Daniel Coleman looking at his watch, I wonder whether he was saying he was a bit tired. But look at him. Shadrach Hoff there, number 9. Meza Gebu of Ethiopia. Ramala of South Africa. The Frenchman, Milan. Then Andrew Pearson and Keith Cullen in that group. The 3 Britons are doing extremely well here. But surprisingly, at this stage of the race, John Brown has taken it on and opened up a quick gap on Daniel Coleman. And in this part of the race, you can see Coleman in 2nd place, weaving from side to side, not at all comfortable in those conditions. And now John Brown, he's thrown down the gauntlet, he's challenged the Africans. He said the danger will come from Africa. 2nd place a Kenyan, 3rd place a South African, and 4th place an Ethiopian. He was dead right about the dangers.
Well, Brown taking on the field just as he did in the European cross-country championships. Deep in concentration. He looks very comfortable. Coleman, well, I can tell you, is taking this race very, very seriously. He left his family on Christmas Day to come over to prepare for this race. He didn't want to rush over. He was making a serious attempt at it. Number 50 there, that's Paul Taylor. 53, Steve Tunstall, we mentioned him earlier, and then number 8 is Robert Stepko of the Slovak Republic. But the leader, and it's now opening up a gap of some significance in the first half of this race. And Brendan, remember the conditions in Belgium last week are very, very heavy underfoot. He proved himself to be strong in those conditions. It's soft going out there, although it suits the track athlete. For Coleman, it won't be as suitable as it is for Brown.
No, it isn't. In any normal athlete, you would say that John Brown had a significant lead. But we saw Daniel Coleman on the earlier laps accelerating in the middle of the race and just closing down those gaps. And there he goes again now. This time, Coleman just moving in on John Brown. John Brown down the hill and Coleman just stretching out. Just look at this man, Daniel Coleman. He's run 3 of the fastest 5,000 metres of all time, and he's run 3 of the fastest three of the 4 fastest 3,000 metres of all time. So he's certainly got some pedigree on the track. He's never quite reached these heights at cross-country running, but you can tell he meant business when he was prepared to travel on Christmas Day. And that gap, by European standards, is a gap that would be difficult to close. But by African standards, but by this man, Daniel Coleman standards, that gap is not too much. John Brown really needs to begin to dig deeper, just to begin to stretch. He wouldn't be comfortable if he went into the last lap with only this kind of lead. But this is a great performance by John Brown. He really means business as he starts on the penultimate lap, lap 5 of this 9,000 metre race. John Brown leads from the Kenyan world record holder Daniel Coleman. Well, he said it would be an intriguing race. He said he didn't like the idea of being favourite, but it certainly is an intriguing race now. Can Coleman catch him? And there's Keith Cullen at the back of that group. Just ahead of Keith Cullen is Meza Gabu, who won this race last year. But there's Daniel Coleman, has closed right down on John Brown, and he closes these gaps like no man we've seen before. And in third place, Ramallah of South Africa. Now John Brown really has to just keep his concentration at this point. Don't be surprised to find Coleman alongside him, as long as he wasn't thinking that he had a winning lead. Third place, Ramallah. Fourth place, Milon. Fifth place, Shadrach Hoff. Then Andrew Pearson. Then Keith Cullen. But John Brown knows that Coleman has been running in fits and starts. And now they're beyond halfway, and we've never seen Coleman extended beyond 5,000 metres. Well, today, can John Brown run the finish out of Daniel Coleman? And as I say that, Coleman decides to attack him. Unusual tactics we've seen from Coleman today, and really textbook tactics by John Brown.
I think the important line there from you, Brendan, was as long as Brown doesn't think that he had a winning lead at that particular stage, because psychologically to have that bigger lead pulled back at this stage, certainly the likes of Guerra couldn't do it in the European cross-country championships, and Brown had got away from him early on. But this very much a big race now, and look at Ramallah of the Republic of South Africa in third place.
I wasn't surprised that Daniel Coleman was able to close that gap on John Brown, but I was surprised that Hendrik Ramallah, the lawyer from Johannesburg, who's recently qualified as a lawyer in Johannesburg, was able to close that gap. So this time Daniel Coleman attacks, and this time I think it's Daniel Coleman's effort to try and win this race. And I think if anything, John Brown has slowed down, because Ramallah has now come alongside him, and Ramallah moving alongside Daniel Coleman. He has tremendous respect, as he was telling yesterday, for performances that Daniel Coleman did, but he's looking at his watch too, and he'll find 17 minutes of running. They've got a lap and a half to go, and these three now pulling away from Milan of France. Now John Brown, he really needs to try and run his own race now. He's run his own race so far, and he shouldn't get drawn into the tactics of running in bursts. Now, has he got the confidence to tackle the Kenyan Coleman?
Well, looking at Ramallah, he didn't advance beyond the heats of the Olympic 10,000 metres, just to give you some idea of his form of the last season, and he's now taken it on and making his share of the effort, and John Brown now finds himself in third place. So from the Republic of South Africa, as you said, Brendan, he's a law student, the South African 5,000 and 10,000 metre champion in 1995. He went to the World Championships in Gothenburg in 1995. He was 17th overall in the 10,000 metres, so he's not made a real impact on the track, but I must say here, He's clearly wintering well and looks very, very impressive indeed. So he leads, Coman in second place, Brown in third, and really the winner is going to come from these three surely.
And they're really moving now at this part of the race. 19 minutes running in them, and the three of them are really beginning to move again. I sense that John Brown slowed down on that last lap, and I wonder if John's had a breather and now he's going to try and attack this thing as they come up this hill onto the level part. The two Africans, and Daniel Coman takes off again. Well, it's frustrating to run against a guy like this when he's running like this, but there's a few men in the world found that a difficult problem last summer. As he comes round now, 2 big laps to go in this race. Daniel Coman, Hendrik Ramala, the lawyer from Johannesburg, and then John Brown. And I wonder if John Brown, on that part of the race where he was a little bit clear of the field, began to think he was going to win it. Began to think he was going to win it by a distance.
So there's 2 laps of this to go, according to our records here. 6 big laps of the course, plus the start small lap, plus 170 metres of finish, and Coman now beginning to break away. I wonder whether Ramala made his effort just to see what the others could do, and Brown has tucked in behind Ramala, and he'll have to go with Coman, although having said that, Coman just drifts back and forth at will at the moment. We always expected that he would be a real threat here. You've just got to look at what he can run 5,000 metres in 12 minutes and 45 seconds. 09, that was this last season. His world record over 3,000, 7 minutes, 20.67. I mean, he's the Kenyan record holder after all the great Kenyans that have been in the past, Brendan. He's the record holder. And we must remember once again, he's only 20.
Well, the leader, Daniel Coman, as you said, Stuart, his pedigree on the track has been phenomenal this year. But like he said in an interview, he didn't win a medal in the Olympics last year, and his targets for 1997 are to win the gold medal in the 5,000 metres in the World Championships in Athens. John Brown's target for those championships is to finish in the first 6. And then the chasing group, Andrew Pearson, number 6, Longwood Harriers. Mezigabu of Ethiopia, Milan of France, number 7, who's running a very, very good race today. Mezigabu we thought would challenge for the lead here, but Andrew Pearson returning to form after his performance, which was a little disappointing in the European Cross Country Championships, but now we're back in the lead. Daniel Coman a yard ahead of John Brown. And John Brown really has got to be a little bit mesmerised by the way these Africans have run, and I'm sure that John's run a more consistent overall pace, and Coleman looks as though he's been able to break away or close the gap whenever he's wanted to, and John Brown had a good gap in the middle of the race, but Coleman closed it down in about 100 metres. This man is a rare talent. We've seen some great runners come out of Kenya, and at the moment some of this man's marks are the best we've ever seen. Milan of France, number 7, good run by him in the European Cross Country Championships a few weeks ago. Mezigabu, last year's winner, and then Andrew Pearson, and then Keith Cullen. And to have 3 Britons in the top 7 places, and then another one, Paul Taylor, just behind Keith Cullen. The British athletes have approached this race very, very positively, and between them there's some good performances there. As we look back to the leader, who now has shot about 10 metres ahead of John Brown and Ramala, and the 3 of them are approaching the incline, and when they get to the top of the hill there, they'll find out with 1 lap to go.
Well, certainly this will be a great learning process for John Brown to run against an athlete of such versatility. A man who can just drop back in the field and come to the front at will. A man who can take on the European champion in such a way. But it has been a very, very fine competitive race, whatever happens now.
Well, if you put John Brown's run into perspective, Daniel Coman was outstanding last year at 3,000 metres and 5,000 metres. And I think if John Brown can run like this next summer, then the British record for 5,000 and 10,000 metres certainly can become John Brown's property. And there you can see there is a little bit of a weakness in Daniel Coman's running on the inclines. He's not as good on the inclines as he is on the flat. But having said that, he's outstanding on the flat. As he climbs there, John Brown closes down here. And now they come through the gantry for the last time. They hear the bell there, and Daniel Coleman leading John Brown, who's put up a tremendous performance to be this close to this outstanding athlete from Kenya. And has John Brown got the confidence, or has he still got the desire to try and take on the young Kenyan? Well, his last two races, he beat Paul Turgat, the other Kenyan, who was the world cross-country champion. Can he beat the world record holder, Daniel Coleman? He's certainly putting Coleman under pressure, and this is as much pressure as we've seen on Coleman, but he reacts to that pressure.
Well, Brown is a very thoughtful man, a very pensive man, a man who goes about his business this year as if he knows exactly what he's doing. This has been hard. The conditions underfoot much easier than when you run the European cross-country race, but he's up against another factor here, a Kenyan who this season surely will put new figures to the 5,000 metres and certainly perhaps again to the 3,000 metres, and we shall see. But he is such a talent, and he's only a youngster. But Brown is not out of this. Don't ever discount this man, because he is a different athlete this year, and look at the way he attacks on the hill.
Well, he certainly gathered himself down that side, down the hill there, and this is the weakness in Daniel Coleman's race on the incline. And this is a fine performance by John Brown. He's certainly trying to win this race. He's certainly not settling for second. Every time he senses he's got a chance, and now he's got to accelerate, because we saw Coleman in the summer run extremely fast in the last 200 metres of a race, but he's looked over his shoulder, and John Brown putting up a tremendous performance. Ramallah chasing Coleman now, but this certainly is John Brown's bid for victory. Could he pull off? This would be a real turn up for the books if he could do that. But the European cross-country champion, you can see the look of concentration in his eyes. He's looking forward, he's not looking back at all, and he's testing Daniel Coleman. Whatever happens here, Coleman knows he's been in a tougher race than we've seen him for a long time.
Absolutely right. John Brown, the Sheffield Athletics Club, leading at the moment in this last lap, ahead of Daniel Coleman of Kenya. And they're ahead of Ramallah, Hendrik Ramallah of the Republic of South Africa. And the crowd's now rushing over to the finish funnel. They've got about a third of the major lap left, plus the home straight. And Brown now really making his bid. A tremendous battle, and look at Coleman. Relaxed, easy swing of those arms. There's a lot of running left in him yet, I fear.
Yeah, but this is the bit of the course he likes, the level bit where he can just stretch out. He's not too happy downhill, and he's not too happy uphill, but he's phenomenal on the flat. Ramallah in third place there. Milan of France in fourth place. Mezegabu, last year's champion, and a good performance behind him by Andrew Pearson. But the two of them, the leaders, are battling it out. Now John Brown joins Daniel Coleman again. Well, I haven't seen a better performance by a British cross-country runner for a long, long time. And John Brown is now having a real go to try and win this race. He stretches him downhill. He knows there's only one weakness, and that's not on the level part of the course. It's on these inclines. And I saw Daniel Coleman coming around this bend before, and he wasn't too comfortable. But John Brown's trying, but Daniel Coleman just seems to have that extra gear. He certainly just seems to be able to accelerate when he wants to, but he knows he's been in a race today, and John Brown is putting up a fine performance. Now, if he can just kick in once more round that bend, Coleman's not too happy there. He's got one more incline, and he's got one more corner. This is the weakness of Daniel Coleman, but I think you'll see Coleman, when they come up this hill, attack John Brown. He's only 200 metres left in this race, and it would look to any normal athlete that John Brown had a winning lead here. As he turns on this bend, this is not Coleman's favourite part of the course. Is he giving up the chase? And has John Brown taken a great scalp against this great Kenyan athlete? Now the last hill. John Brown, 180 metres to go. Coleman starts his chase, and Brown now, it's up to him.
He digs in, and has Coleman got the sprint finish? He's still dangerous. He's chasing hard, and the gap closing slightly, and Brown digs in. Coleman's gait is quickening, and the Kenyans catching him, and Brown is gonna, can he hold him off? About 60 metres to go. Brown, the European champion, who took British distance running to the fore at the European Championships, does it again, and Brown, big smile now, is the champion. Brilliant run. Coleman in second place. Ramallah in third place. Milan of France coming in fourth place. And then Mezegabu is there behind him, along with Pearson. Pearson, then Mezegabu. What a brilliant performance by Pearson. Mesogebu, number 13. Well, Pearson beat last year's winner there. And then Cullen comes in after him, being chased by Paul Taylor. And then Stefko of the Slovak Republic. It's been a marvellous, marvellous performance overall by British distance running. There's the man from the Slovak Republic. But what a brilliant run by this man. John Brown wins this Durham race. He came here to win it. This is a different man. He's taken distance running over the country certainly into a new era now and has put Britain back on the map. He's the European champion. He's beaten the world record holder at 3,000 metres, a man who came so close at 5,000 metres. He's beaten one of the greats.
He certainly has, and that's a great, great victory by John Brown, leading a resurgence in British distance running. It's great to see that at the end of 1996, and this man certainly finished off the year in tremendous style. And what a scalp. Daniel Coleman looked invincible at times, both on the track and in this race, but John Brown didn't give up at all. And that's a famous victory by John Brown over the world record holder from Kenya and then Henrik Ramala of South Africa.